Hi QEP instructors, this is Cindy. We've gone through a lot of information about writing to learn, so I thought it might help to review everything we've covered in this one video. As we've discussed, our QEP adds writing to our curricula because writing is a skill. The more we do it, the better we are at it. QEP instructors, therefore, add writing assignments to their QEP classes so that students write at least 2,500 words over the course of the semester. Just as a guideline, 1 page double-spaced times New Roman 12-point font with 1-inch margins is about 250 words. So we're talking about 10 pages, more or less, that we're adding to our classes. Our QEP is also based on this understanding. We judge good writing by 2 criteria. First, we have to know why we are writing. Once we know our purpose, then we can tell if our writing does what it sets out to do. In other words, does it serve its intended purpose? The second thing we look at is to whom we are writing, because in order to be good writing, it has to communicate effectively with its intended audience. So the answer to the question, is this good writing, is always, it depends. It depends upon the context. Why am I writing, and to whom? If I accomplish my purpose and reach my audience, then yes, it's good writing. How do we get our students to write 2,500 words per semester? Through 2 types of assignments, process writing assignments and writing to learn assignments. So half of the required 2,500 words, or 1,250 words, will be written as part of process writing assignments, which we'll talk about in the next video. The other half, or again 1,250 words, will be written as writing to learn assignments. That's still 5 pages. But these 5 pages are informal and exploratory. Informal and exploratory, yes, but also carefully designed by the instructor to encourage students to actively engage with and think critically about the important concepts in your discipline. So these are writing exercises where you might ask your students to summarize what you've told them or what they've read. Consolidate new concepts that you've taught. Reflect on how what they've learned applies to their own experiences. Explain important concepts. Apply those concepts. Question or critique new ideas. All of these types of writing give students a chance to grapple with and think about new content so that they truly come to understand it rather than just memorizing it. So we might say the purpose of writing to learn activities is twofold. First, to engage students with course content in ways that enhance their learning. And second, to give you information that tells you how well your students are learning. Therefore, the primary audience for writing to learn activities is the student herself. The secondary audience is the instructor, you. Notice that the purpose is not to show writing proficiency, and the audience is not some segment of the reading public, as it is in much of our academic writing. Therefore, the answer to the question, is this good writing, depends upon a different set of criteria than most of us regularly use when assessing student writing. The answer to, is this good writing to learn writing, is yes, when what we do encourages our students to actively engage with their course content and engage in critical thinking about that content. So good writing to learn writing is, as we have already seen, informal and exploratory. It is usually short, it's often spontaneous, it's personal in nature. It's the writer's own feelings or reflections on what they're learning. Because it is a tool for learning and not meant to be a public piece of writing, it is not corrected in the usual sense of how we grade. It's unrevised and unedited, and it works best if it's part of the routine of your classroom and it's integral to your class content. We know this works. Studies tell us that using writing to learn strategies in the classroom increase student understanding and retention of course content by a factor of 2 or 3. Our own QEP instructors agree. We asked the fall 2013 instructors this question: how helpful was all writing, both the process writing and the writing to learn, in improving your students' learning? 59% said that the writing was very helpful in improving student learning, and nobody, absolutely nobody, found that it was not helpful. Every single QEP instructor found that the writing that they did was at least somewhat helpful in improving student learning. Our students also agree that it's helpful. In one section of EN 213, just as one example, 97% of our students found that journal writing, a common writing to learn activity, was helpful, with 72% of them finding it very helpful. Likewise, in the same section, 100% of the students found reading responses helpful, and 100% found essay questions helpful. So we know how it works. How about an example? Let's say you are close to the end of a class period where you have introduced a new concept that I'll call X. You might say to your students, in our last 5 minutes, I'm going to pass out a note card to each one of you. Put your name at the top and summarize what I said today regarding the 3 most important things about X. Okay, so what does this do? First, for your students, it reinforces the importance of those 3 points. It also allows students to check their notes for the 3 points, make sure they're there. It helps them consolidate what they've learned by rephrasing it and explaining it back to you. And if they can't do that, it allows them to recognize for themselves that they don't understand what they've heard that day. Then you take up these note cards and skim them. Now, what does this do? It allows you to see for yourself, before the next test, who does not understand what. You might use this information as a starting point for the next class period, or perhaps for a post on a class-wide discussion board. As for grading, all it takes is a quick check mark in your gradebook for those students who completed the note cards according to your instructions. You can see how you can tailor the note card for a wide variety of uses over the semester. You might pass it out at the beginning of class and ask students to respond to a question about the reading they did for the class. You might, in the middle of class, see that everyone is confused and ask them to write down what has them most confused at this moment. If a discussion gets heated, you might pass out note cards to let the discussion cool off a bit. You might, in reviewing for a test, have students write one possible test question that would be a good assessment for a particular concept, and then what they think the right answer would be. You might, at the end of class, ask them to consider a question that they will encounter in the reading that is assigned for the next class. In each of these examples, you are encouraging your students to engage actively with the content that you are teaching. But note cards are only one writing to learn activity. If they sound like they will work in your class, use them. But if not, pick something else. John Bean lists 22 writing to learn activities beginning on page 131. All you need is 1 or 2 that will work for you. You can use this checklist as you shape your writing to learn assignments for your class. So the first thing to consider is whether your assignment is consistent with the philosophy of writing to learn. Does it promote critical thinking about the concepts in your discipline? To do so, it needs to be integral to your course content so that it serves your goals and objectives in the class. As one of the QEP instructors puts it, you don't want the writing to be something extra that you add to what you already do. If it is integral to your content, the act of doing it will help students succeed in your course. Is it exploratory in nature? Does it give students an opportunity to play in a low-risk way with the ideas you are teaching? When we play with ideas, we set aside judgments of right and wrong. Instead, we get to speculate, ask questions, interpret, predict. This sounds easy, but it can be difficult to convince students that you really do want them to do something other than parrot the right answer back to you. If students are going to do critical thinking, they have to be able to show you what they don't know rather than only what they do know. The next category is about style and form. Because it is thinking aloud on paper, writing to learn is informal. That means that grammar, spelling, sentence structure, and all the usual rules of good academic writing do not apply here. There's a good reason for that. The kind of thinking we do when we are learning a new concept is different from the kind of thinking we do when we are applying the conventions of written language. The second kind of thinking requires an internal censor, the one that judges right and wrong, but we don't want right and wrong interfering with the free play of ideas. It is also personal writing, a place for each student to wrestle with your course content and make it his own. I think this, I don't understand that, you said this, etc. It can be in first and second person. It is also unedited and unrevised because once it is written, it has served its purpose. There's no reason to continue to spend time on it. Now down to the nuts and bolts. You should make it very clear in your syllabus what your writing to learn activities will be and how they will count. For example, here's what I include in my syllabus about a writing to learn activity that I use: reading responses. You will notice that this activity in my class counts. Students have to do it to pass the course. And I do assess it based on whether they've done it according to my directions. But that is not grading it in the traditional sense. I respond to their ideas, or I tell them that they have not followed the instructions I've given, or I give them suggestions on how to do better reading and responding, but I do not mark mistakes or corrections. And in the note card example we discussed earlier, you wouldn't write on the note cards at all. It would take no writing on your part. It also helps to establish a routine with your writing to learn activity so that students know what to expect and what they should do. And finally, even though each individual writing to learn activity is brief, they should occur often enough over the semester to produce 1,250 words. For example, if students were to write about 100 words every time you handed out a note card, you would need to use note cards 13 times, about once a week, over the semester. Okay, so that's about all that I have for a review of what we said about writing to learn. If you have anything to add, why don't you send me an email? Or if you have any questions, send me an email about that too. In the next video that I send you, we'll move on to consider process writing.